This is the Tyler Morgan Show on Relentless Daring Media Network.
Welcome to the land of bourbon and bad decisions, where the nights are long and the truth cuts deep. Forces rise against the tide with clear intentions in the place where freedom never sleeps. Echoes of the past in the halls of tomorrow. The light will chase away the whispers of sorrow. Stand tall, never bow, the fight's just beginning. With every word, the fire keeps on spinning. Back along and got a message for the nation. Raising up the flag with no hesitation. Through the storm, the fire burns bright. On the edge of reason, we defend our rights. Whoa.
Welcome back to Land of Bourbon and Bad Decisions. I know normally I'm kind of bouncing off the walls coming onto this, but tonight's talk is not something you go into all bouncing off the walls. I am discussing the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it's a hard topic. It truly is. And the reaction on both sides is to be expected. As we learn more about the shooter, as we learn more about all of it, and there's a lot of code. First, and during my deployment, I was able to really compartmentalize a lot of what I saw. Now, we didn't have a lot of our guys get severe injuries. We had a couple guys who took some really bad grenade shrapnel that they had to spend several days at the combat support hospital at Fob Salerno. Several more who had minor injuries with some blood draw. But we're soldiers. We were there on behalf of the United States government to wage war. Say what you will about the politics of being in Afghanistan at that point, nearly 10 years after 9/11. That's neither here nor there. I was there. I transferred from National Guard to active duty of my own free will. No one twisted my arm into it. And I went willingly into the zone of combat to mete out violence on, the enemies of the United States, enemies who are also, for the most part, enemies of the Afghan people. They didn't care about the Afghan people. They didn't care who they got hurt, who they hurt. They didn't care about building a free nation. Not that we should have cared about nation building at all in Afghanistan, but again, neither here nor there. But those people, for the most part, were there of their own volition. The insurgents who are Afghans, insurgents who are Jordanians and Saudis and Pakistanis, who were there of their own volition to wage war against us and against the Afghan security forces. So the Afghan security forces were there of their own volition. So when injuries and some rather grievous ones happened to our Afghan counterparts, I was able to compartmentalize that. When grievous injuries happened to our enemy over there, I was able to compartmentalize, be they American, Afghan security forces, or insurgent, they are warriors. They have answered a call one way or the other to mete out violence on the enemy. And having done that, they are at risk of grave bodily injury or death themselves. So I was able to compartmentalize that, but I was never able to fully separate out and prevent moral injury from was injury to civilians, to innocent bystanders who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Children who wanted nothing more than to grab some fruit from the fruit stand in the local bazaar. These are not people who signed up to fight a war. These are not people who accept that they may be killed or greatly injured because they're just trying to live their everyday lives. And so seeing the videos from Wednesday of Charlie's death, the long distance video where you see his head snap back after he's hit, there's not a lot of detail. It's just like, oh my God, that's awful. But when you see the up close video from 15, 20, 30 feet away, and you see the instant reaction of his peripheral nervous system causing his hands to jerk up and clench fists and his head snap back and the blood just pour out. That was incredibly graphic. And as I said on my TikTok, responding to my friend Amy What's Her Face, it brought back spicy memories. Memories that I know I can't forget. I know I won't forget. They are ingrained in me. That helplessness of a young child with grenade shrapnel wounds. And because it's considered part of a mass casualty event, because you have like 3 adults and a child, those 3 adults being Afghan army or Afghan police, and they loaded up this young boy and they bring onto the cop to the aid station. So you're helping put bandages on. You're carrying the litters to the helicopter landing zone, and you're helping the medics put these innocent bystanders onto a medevac plane or medevac helicopter, and you're just hoping they make it. And seeing the up close video of Charlie getting hit, it brought back all those memories. I'm fighting back tears right now just because it still hits hard. And I'm sure adding tequila to emotions is a bad idea. But the initial chaos On the right, it bred shock, it bred anger, it bred helplessness because for 2 hours until it was officially announced that he had succumbed to his injuries, many on the right were praying. I was praying, asking God, if it's your will, please, God, let him survive. And I know there's lefties who like, oh, you mean if it's God's will, so God can't do everything? It's not that God can't do everything. God can. God created the world in 6 days and then took a break on the seventh. I've seen miraculous survivals. It's not that God can't do everything, but sometimes when you pray, the answer is no. It is not my place to question God's will. And it was not God's will for Charlie Kirk to survive that day. But the most sickening part of it, of all of it, was crazy leftists. Like if they were apathetic, okay, fine. There's people they didn't care about Charlie Kirk. There's like, man, that is awful, but it has no effect on me. I can live with that. You you have nothing bad to say, and so you just go on with your life. So yeah, I didn't like him, but sucks. I'm not going to run him down just because I didn't like him. I'm just going to go on with my life. That was position number one. Position number two, and I saw a lot of this position. The oh my God, I didn't agree with a damn thing he said. But he was always nice to me if we interacted. You could see him trying to be polite to people, even though he didn't, they were on opposite sides. And I am just so sorry. No one deserves to be a victim of violence because of their political beliefs. That and there's some people I follow on TikTok who are very, very liberal. But I enjoy their content because whenever they do get into politics, you can tell they're honest brokers. They will explain exactly why they believe X, Y, and Z. And you can say, well, I disagree because of A, B, C. And you can have a rational discourse, which is what Charlie Kirk was all about. And these people were just so completely shocked and taken aback that they didn't have anything other to say than, "Oh my gosh, we are so sorry." For the fans of Charlie Kirk, we know this leaves a hole in your heart, and it's tragic, especially knowing that he has a wife and 2 kids. And I think that's like the biggest common denominator was you have a young wife with 2 young children that they do not get to grow old with their husband and their father, and them being husbands and fathers themselves, it broke part of them because despite any political differences, it was the ultimate of common denominators. And then you had the freak shows. You had the people who were gloating. You had the people doing happy dances. Why? How many Republicans, when Melissa Hortman and her husband got killed by a crazy person who's supposedly MAGA, I don't know, because to me it seems really weird how someone who is a hardcore MAGA Republican would be a Tim Walz political appointee. Make that one make sense. But you didn't see anyone do it. And a lot of people bring up Paul Pelosi. You know what? I made jokes about Paul Pelosi. And in retrospect, I am absolutely fucking ashamed of myself. I am not going to apologize for my language. That is just how disgusted I am with myself for linking him being beaten with a hammer to his DUI wreck. And jokes about him getting hammered again. That brings me to one more point. There was one video that I saw going through TikTok yesterday. There was a left-wing creator, and I give this man so much credit because this made me think about me. When he came out and he said, he started off with the words, "I was complicit." He willingly acknowledged that his own jokes and his own statements, even while meant as satire, contributed in some way, shape, or form to the world we're in now, where political discourse can put a target on your back. And that is one of the things that got me to stop and think that, maybe I'm not helping. I started this podcast as a way to have honest dialogue with whoever listens. Left, right, center. I know the opinions I have and some of the ideas and analysis that I have is going to make some people, even on the right, angry, because not everyone agrees on everything all of the time. But I started this podcast as a way to say, hey, I don't care what those people think, but with these big names on, I don't care what Glenn Beck says. I don't care what Rush Limbaugh says. I don't care what Sean Hannity says. I don't care what Keith Olbermann says. You name a talking head. I don't agree 100% with what everyone on the right says. I don't agree probably more than 5% what people on the left say. But I have my own opinions and I wanted to share them. share them in a way that normally, kind of lighthearted. You hear it when I read articles and the voices of people just kind of pop out as I'm reading quotes in an article because I never wanted to take myself so seriously that I burn myself out because I'm a professional podcaster. Pay attention to me. That's never what I wanted. This is always meant to be an outlet for me to share my opinions, my frustrations, enjoy a drink. Like if I was discussing this stuff with friends, around the kitchen table, and when someone else's self-reflection makes me have to go, holy crap, I didn't help. I hurt. Now I'm not going to end the podcast over this. I'm not. Probably not even going to take a break except for those weekends where everything's just so busy. I don't have time. But I am going to be more careful with what I say. And I have friends on the right. They are literally ready to go to war. If civil war was declared tomorrow, they're at the front of the line. I'm glad you have a fighting spirit. This is not it. Despite all of the crap going on in our country, I still think there's hope. If it comes down to civil war, I've been in combat. I have seen shit that I do not ever want to remember again, but it's there. And I will be Mel Gibson in The Patriot. I'll stay out as long as I can, but push come to shove, I'm shoving back. Believe me, I do not want to see civil war in this country because all that leaves is an inheritance of devastation for our kids and grandkids that have to spend the next 20 years rebuilding when it's all said and done. But as we've been learning more and more about the shooter, yeah, initial reports are wrong. They detained one guy right away. Obviously not the shooter. But he was saying some crazy crap to the cops. So, okay, it seems like it could be him. They detained him, took him in, and okay, he's not the shooter. Detained a second guy. Okay, he's not the shooter. Then late Thursday night, with all of the pictures of the shooter that they they were able to glean off of security cameras around the campus and put online. The shooter's dad, the alleged shooter's dad, said, holy crap, I think this is my son. And he called the bishop and said, what do I do? He told him. So, being a retired sheriff's deputy, he had a friend who was U.S. Marshal and said, what do I do? And the marshal said, if you can convince him to come in, bring him in. If you cannot, keep him there and we will have him picked up. And so 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever time, Thursday night, law enforcement went to his house and detained the alleged shooters. I'm sorry, alleged shooter. Didn't mean to get the S. It was not plural. This ain't some big grand conspiracy that I know of. But, on Wednesday afternoon, they found the gun, an, an older Mauser 98 with the scope, with the rounds, with etchings on them or engravings, or even just writing with a Sharpie. I really don't know for sure. With things like, "Hey, fascist, catch," written on it. Ciao Bella. Then some other gamer meme type stuff. If you look at this, you're gay. And there's some confusion as to what is the political ideology of the shooter. Now, at first, you read the "Hey, fascist, catch," and then you see the arrows that were included on that cartridge. And okay, this is a reference to Helldivers. Ciao Bella. Now, a lot of people are pointing to a gaming streamer who sings Ciao Bella while he live streams. You know what Ciao Bella was before a crazy YouTuber or a crazy video game streamer started singing it online? It was what the communists in post World War II Italy were singing as an anti-fascist, you know, an anti-fascist hymn, if you will. But yeah, the the thing about Bulge's, furry, anti-furry humor or whatever, it's like, I don't know. I just I don't get that. And like I said, we're learning more and more about the shooter, whose name I am not going to say. I don't care if it's a school shooter. I don't care if it is a political assassin. I don't care if it's a mass shooter. I'm not saying the name. They're getting enough free press. They don't need free press from me. But like I said, we're learning more and more about this young man, and he is young. He's 22. And this is Hindustan Times, because for some reason the best reporting that's straightforward without having a political bent, I always have to go outside of the country. So, shooter arrested for Charlie Kirk's shooting, bizarrely told friends on Discord his doppelganger killed Kirk to frame him. A day after blank, the suspect in Charlie Kirk's shooting was arrested, a shocking update about the former has been revealed. Blank allegedly confessed to killing Charlie Kirk hours after the fatal Utah Valley University, or after the fatal shooting at Utah Valley University on Wednesday. But there's a plot twist. It was not him, but his doppelganger. New York Times on Saturday published a report on Blank's Discord chats. Their analysis revealed that he came online on Discord hours after shooting on Wednesday afternoon, said that his doppelganger shot and killed Charlie Kirk. The motive? Supposedly to want to get Blank in trouble. I mean, what is this? Stephen King's The Outsider? The Dark Half? What are we doing here? The New York Times reported that Blank's friends on Discord saw the semblance between him and the photo of the suspect on the FBI released. After that, one of the members of the chat group, reportedly an acquaintance of him, asked WYA, or where you're at. The message ended with the skull emoji. It was in reply to this message that Robinson, I said his name, screw it, that he wrote his doppelganger fatally shot Charlie Kirk in Orem. What followed was an epic irony as the group, along with him, discussed how they could frame Blank as the killer owing to his semblance and get the $100,000 reward that was on offer. He responded, saying he is up for it if he, quote, gets a cut. Buck didn't stop there. Another members remembered the arrest of that guy who killed United Healthcare CEO who was caught at McDonald's in Pennsylvania. The user wrote, whatever you do, don't go to a McDonald's anytime soon. He replied, better to get rid of the manifesto, an exact copy of the rifle I have lying around. Not very good things to joke about, especially if they did recover a manifesto. The FBI investigation is currently probing into Blank's motive as they prepare to press charges against him when he appears in court later this month. In connection with the probe, the FBI on Saturday interrogated the roommates who shared a 3-bedroom apartment with him in St. George, Utah. Though authorities did not reveal the details on the investigation, multiple news outlets reported it, citing unnamed law enforcement sources. The reports by Axios, Fox, and New York Post claimed that he was in a relationship with a trans partner and lived with them at the St. George apartment. Daily Mail reported that a roommate of him, Lance Twiggs, showed the FBI incriminating texts allegedly from him where the suspect talked about stashing a gun used to kill Charlie Kirk in a bush near UVU, which, oddly enough, that's where they found the gun, wrapped in a towel, stuffed in a bush. It is not known if the reported trans partner and the roommate who showed incriminating texts are the same individual. And that's where that article leaves off. So, like I said, there is so much going on with all of this. You have the left claiming that he's a groyper, one of these Nick Fuentes followers who are anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, really lean into neo-Nazi levels of bullcrap. I know I've already sworn a few times on this episode, but I want to keep it to a minimum. But they really lean into all of this, and the people on the left are saying, "Look, he's a straight white kid." Well, I mean, if he's actually dating a dude transitioning to a chick, I don't think he's a straight white kid. I think that would make him gay. That's neither here nor there. And if he was dropping anti-furry stuff, which is really weird because it's also other reports I've seen is that this alleged trans partner is also into the furry stuff. But there's so much conflicting information. Well, he was super MAGA because, look, his whole family was MAGA. Then you're getting reports from the family that the family aren't fans of Charlie Kirk. I'm sure Charlie Kirk may have had had some opinions on the LDS church, which they might not, that may have turned them again, you know, off from him. But they also reported that he really, really hated Charlie Kirk. You have, friends from high school who state that, they're speaking anonymously, so I don't know how accurate this is. I have an inherent distrust of people who speak to reporters and won't put their name behind it. I mean, sometimes people have to do it for obvious reasons, especially if they are speaking to reporters and then they have receipts that back up what they say. That is, that is another thing entirely. But, you have, high school friends speaking out and saying to reporters that, yeah, starting in like his sophomore year of high school, he was really starting to, spout some leftist stuff. And he would get really, really agitated over it and this, that, and the other. But like I said, I don't know if that's true. I'm repeating what other people reported, and I'm ensuring that I say this has been alleged because, the source is anonymous, so I don't know how reliable it is. It wouldn't be the first time that someone speaking anonymously has made crap up to further an agenda one way or the other. And so I don't know. Now, would it shock me if, oh, yes, he is a hardcore leftist and that was his motivation? Absolutely not. Would it shock me if he was a Nick Fuentes Groyper follower around his little cult of personality that, despite what the left says about MAGA and being a cult of personality around Donald Trump, it is nothing like the cult of personality around Nick Fuentes or the NAFO. We should have U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine freaks. But, you know, because these Groyper nut jobs, they would go to Charlie Kirk events and ask questions that make him look like a super moderate to try to discredit him to the rest of the right. You can't trust this guy because he's a moderate. You need to be with us because we are the real right. Like I said, if he was into that and there was enough chatter going on in that community to drive him to do that, screw them too. And it wouldn't surprise me. So while I have my suspicions, and I said I think he's probably a left wing nut who And you look at everything the left has been saying for the last 10 years. Since 2015, when Donald Trump came down the elevator and people started glomming on to Donald Trump, well, they're racist, they're fascists, and we need to stop them. That kind of language pushes certain people really far. Whether your intent is to convince someone to commit an act of violence over their political ideology to or not. It's like the one guy on TikTok said, he is very upset because he has a deadpan delivery and he was saying stuff that he knew to be satire. But did everybody else? Are there a contingent in his followers on TikTok? And it just popping up in the For You page as people scroll who don't register the satire. And they say, you know what? That's a good idea. That's where I think the problem is on both sides. I'm not going to sit and say the right has no one on the right has ever said inflammatory stuff. They have. And people have taken stuff that was inflammatory and gone too far. I think January 6th is a prime example of that. And I know there's people on the right who, well, January 6th, blah, blah, blah. No, the people who walked in after the riot and calmly walked through the Capitol and walked out, they told the security, they told the Capitol police officers, have a nice day, officer. I didn't have a problem with those people because in their walk through the Capitol, not smashing things, staying within the ropes, marking the designated walkway, they were engaging in a peaceful protest. Unfortunately, it was preceded by people beating cops, by people smashing windows. Were there provocateurs in the crowd? I believe there were. Yep. Oh, the one nut job that people talked about for forever. Damn it, what's his name? I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He was, very, very important to the FBI at first. And then he's kind of, have you seen this person picture? The collages, his face suddenly disappeared off of it. And then he eventually comes forward and he eventually gets charged and he gets basically a slap on the wrist, even though he was right there telling, he's on video telling the guy, go, go, go. So like I said, I believe there were provocateurs before the crowd got super, super wild and reports of smoke and flashbangs being thrown into the crowd. Again, I don't know how accurate that is. As I said, reports of. I just don't know. People on both sides have said inflammatory things. Libs of TikTok, all caps on Twitter. This is war. No, stop it. Violence begets more violence. Bernie Sanders by far had the best reaction video to all of this. He acknowledges his deep, deep disagreements with Charlie Kirk. And when he says political violence over political thought is uncalled for, he doesn't just reference January 6th. He doesn't just reference uh, the Hortmans in Minnesota. He doesn't just reference Paul Pelosi, which, while Paul Pelosi was a quasi political figure because of his wife being Nancy Pelosi, I think it was just a crazy person who everything else about him screams left wing. I think he was just an easy an easy patsy for the right to be held as a cudgel against the right. But he references attacks on the right. Obviously, Charlie Kirk. Obviously, the guy they arrested who was plotting to kill Greg Kavanaugh. Yeah, Greg Kavanaugh, the Justice Kavanaugh. He references the attack on the congressional baseball practice by a Bernie bro that nearly killed Steve Scalise and wounded several others. He didn't say only one side was responsible. He acknowledged that both sides have done inflammatory things. And again, with the Hortmans, as I said earlier in this episode, I don't know 100% that the guy who did that was MAGA. I think he was a dude who had a significant mental break. And maybe the Hortmans and the 50 other Democrat Farm and Labor Party members on his list, he had some sort of delusion that he was making the party stronger or something. I just don't know. Or maybe they were so far left. That's the reason why he went after them. Like I said, I do not know. But if you made it this far through the episode, I know the old adage, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I want to leave you with this. Freedom is very dangerous. some on the left saying Charlie Kirk did it to himself. He brought it on himself. I mean, look what he said about their, their knees. Well, that was incredibly random and weird. If you're listening to this on podcast and not seeing the video, my microphone stand decided it was just going to get very tired and lay down and take a nap. And that was me tightening the screw, so hopefully it does not fall over again. And of course, it happens when I'm trying to say something profound. For the people talking about, well, Charlie Kirk said that a few deaths is the cost of the Second Amendment. Yeah, it is. It truly is. Because again, freedoms are dangerous. If you want to boil down the 5 freedoms protected in the First Amendment, they all have to do with the dissemination of ideas. You have the right, not granted by the government, protected by the government, to share thoughts that are anti-government, that are anti-society. You have the right to speak and write pamphlets, give sermons, to assemble large crowds to share ideas that are abhorrent to everybody around you. If you are a stark raving racist asshole, you are protected in going out and saying the most racist, god awful bullshit. You can write pamphlets, books, articles, publish stuff online, spreading your anti-government and anarchic, racist garbage. And we don't live in the days of Woodrow Wilson where you can be arrested for it. You can have a church that preaches the most god-awful stuff. Fred Phelps, looking at you. Looking at the communist, anti-capitalist crap you see in some of these relayed out Methodist, Lutheran, Universal Unitarian churches. You're allowed to do it because you have the right. That right is protected. And ideas are dangerous things. Our country was founded on an idea that all men are created equal and that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In 1776, that was dangerous thought. That men are free, that men have agency, that mankind should not serve at a king who declares that he is there by the will of God. That you can own property without permission from the state, that you can have a voice in your government. These ideas scared the status quo in England. And that's why we fought a war. The Muslim conquests through the Middle East and Southern Europe and Northern Africa were fought because of a religious idea, of their own manifest destiny through their religious beliefs. That all will bow to Allah or be subjugated. Again, ideas are dangerous and they're enshrined. The right to disseminate dangerous ideas is enshrined in the First Amendment. The right to protect yourself from crime, from people attempting to take your property, people attempting to take your life, from a tyrannical government. And to do it with guns is enshrined for a reason. The founders knew that there would be bad actors who used that right to commit crimes against other Americans. They knew it because human nature has not changed in 249 years, where suddenly we went from everyone is just, kumbaya, hug your neighbors. There were criminals in 1776 when we declared our independence from England. There were criminals using guns to commit robberies and murders in 1789 when they wrote the Second Amendment, and in 1791 when that amendment was ratified. Human nature has not changed. The right of the majority of people who will never use a firearm to commit a crime. People want to take because it's dangerous. Yes, there will be mass shootings because there are people with a lot of problems who don't know how to ask for help, who get motivated by people who spread the crazy ideas. And they will use the Second Amendment to commit awful things. But freedom is always dangerous. It's dangerous to society because there will be people who, even living in a free country, will say some crazy stuff that takes hold. We see it with cults in America and around the world. Look at what happened in Jonestown. It didn't start in Jonestown. It started in San Francisco, California. That is where the People's Temple started. Look at what happened with the cult in Antlers, Oregon, that eventually people started trying to commit mass poisonings in the neighboring towns. Because ideas are dangerous. Freedom, the ability to spread and disseminate those ideas, and the ability for everybody to own a firearm, more for the protection of themselves, and in the less likely event that our federal government becomes so tyrannical that we have to stand up militias to fight against our government. These are scary things. Charlie Kirk understood that these are scary. Charlie Kirk understood that he may be a victim of violence because of his ideas. But he had unwavering faith in God. His wife and children, well, his wife had unwavering faith in God, unwavering faith in her husband. Her children have unwavering faith in their father. And Charlie Kirk died for having unwavering faith in the freedom to share his ideas that some thought were dangerous. And he died committed to his faith that by having dialogue, he could bring people together. And despite what people on the left says, he left a legacy. He left a very big legacy. Not by screaming and shouting and being an asshole about everything, but by simply sharing facts, listening when he needed to listen. And even when people were absolutely horrible, he still loved them. And damn, I hope I have a legacy that's even a sliver of what Charlie Kirk left. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe or follow, rate, review, and share the podcast. Thank you. Listeners, to support the show, go to ko-fi.com/Tyler Morgan Show to donate there, or relentlessdaring.com and hit the donate button at the top of the page to set up your donation. All music used in the Tyler Morgan Show is used with permission from purpleplanet.com, link in the show notes. 2 Timothy 1:7.